My son told me to contribute rent money in my own house. Let me say that again slowly so you understand what Christmas Eve 2023 meant to me. Carter Anderson, my only child, the boy I raised alone after his father died, looked at me across a table of 20 guests and suggested I start contributing financially if I wanted to keep living in the penthouse. The penthouse I own, the building I bought in 2018, the entire block my late husband Thomas and I built from nothing. But Carter didn't know that. And sitting there with gravy staining my apron and my hands trembling as I held the turkey platter, I realized that was entirely my fault. I am Scarlett Anderson. I'm 62 years old. My knees ache when it rains. My hands shake when I'm tired. I wear reading glasses on a chain around my neck like my mother did. And for the past 4 years, I've been living a lie so complete, so carefully constructed, that my own son believed I was surviving on his charity. This is the story of how my silence almost destroyed him and how breaking it saved us both. Christmas Eve, 7:47 p.m., the penthouse Upper East Side. The turkey was perfect. 22 pounds golden skin, the meat so tender it practically fell off the bone. I'd been up since 5:30 that morning preparing. My back hurt, that constant ache in my lower spine that's been my companion since I turned 60. My feet were swollen in my sensible shoes, the kind with the cushioned insoles I now bought from the pharmacy instead of the department stores I used to love. But the food was perfect. The table gleamed with china I'd collected over 30 years of marriage to Thomas. Crystal glasses caught the light from the Christmas tree, a 12-foot Douglas fir that had taken 3 delivery men to install. The apartment smelled like rosemary sage and the apple pie cooling on the kitchen counter. 20 people filled my dining room. Carter's colleagues from the architectural firm. Vivian's influencer friends, the ones who only looked up from their phones when someone mentioned something Instagram-worthy. Uncle Robert Thomas's old business partner, now retired. Aunt Patty with her condescending smile. Cousins I saw once a year who always asked if I was managing okay in their pitying voices. I moved between the kitchen and dining room like a ghost, serving, clearing, refilling wine glasses. The California Zinfandel was $43 a bottle, I knew, because I'd approved the expense when Vivian ordered it using the credit card she thought belonged to their household account. "Scarlett, sit down for a moment," Aunt Patty said not unkindly. "You've done enough." "I'm fine," I replied, forcing a smile. My reflection in the window behind her showed a woman I barely recognized. Gray hair pulled back in a simple bun, face bare of makeup except for a touch of lipstick that had worn off hours ago, shoulders slightly hunched from carrying heavy dishes. When had I become so small? I remembered being 35, standing on the skeleton frame of our first building in Chelsea, Thomas beside me with his contractor's helmet, both of us laughing at the impossibility of what we were attempting. I'd worn heels then, red lipstick. I'd commanded rooms full of investors and made them believe in projects they thought were too risky. Now I was invisible, the woman who served the turkey. From my position near the kitchen counter, I could see Carter at the head of the table. My son, 32 years old, handsome in that angular way that came from Thomas's side of the family. His Rolex caught the light, a gift from Vivian last Christmas, purchased with my money, though neither of them knew it. He gestured with his wine glass, expansive, confident. "This month has been absolutely insane," he was saying to his cousin Alex. "The client is pushing hard on deadlines. But hey, the salary for a senior architect in New York isn't bad. It's enough to keep this place, the car, everything else." My fingers tightened on the serving spoon. Vivian, seated beside him in a red dress that cost more than I spent on groceries in a month, smiled that satisfied smile I'd come to know too well. "And even so," she added, raising her voice slightly, "the bills never stop coming. This house, the maintenance, the lifestyle, nothing is free in New York City." Several heads nodded sympathetically. "Absolutely right." Uncle Robert cleared his throat. "Rents in this area are impossible. $2,500 to $3,000 a month for a decent apartment." "Exactly." Carter straightened in his chair. I knew that posture. It was the one Thomas used when he was about to make a point. "That's why I always say you have to work hard. No one gives you anything for free in this city." The words hit me like a physical blow. I set down the platter carefully, afraid I might drop it. No one gives you anything for free. I thought of the lease agreement sitting in my office safe. Tenant Carter Anderson. Monthly rent $1,850. Market value for a 2,000-square-foot penthouse on East 70th Street, 6 to 800. The difference my gift every month for 4 years. I thought of the Cadillac Escalade he parked in the garage. Registered to Anderson Properties Fleet Services. Insurance alone, $4,200 annually. Paid by me. I thought of the credit card Vivian used for her shopping trips to Bergdorf Goodman. Primary account holder, Scarlett Anderson. Authorized user, Vivian Reed Anderson. Last month's charges, $4,300. The month before, $5,100. 6 months total, $47,000. My hands found the edge of the counter. I gripped it, feeling the marble cool against my palms. The conversation continued around me, a discussion of money and hard work and the cost of living. These people who sipped $40 wine and complained about struggling. None of them looked at me. None of them saw the woman who'd paid for everything they were eating, drinking, touching. Then Carter wiped his mouth with his napkin Irish linen, another detail he didn't know I'd chosen, and looked directly at me. "Mom," he said, his voice cutting through the chatter. Since we're on the subject of the house, the room fell silent. 20 pairs of eyes turned toward me. My heart began to pound. There was something in his expression I recognized, determination mixed with discomfort. The look he got when he'd decided something and was going to push through despite his misgivings. "I've been thinking," he continued, setting down his wine glass with a soft but firm thud. "If you want to continue living here with us, it would be fair for you to contribute a portion of the rent, like any adult who shares a space." Time stopped. The clock in the hallway an antique Thomas and I found at an estate sale in 1989 ticked loudly in the silence. "It's only fair, right?" Carter added, looking around the table for support. "We're all adults, and if that's difficult for you with your widow's pension, well, maybe it would be better for you to look for something more in line with your means." Vivian nodded, taking a sip of wine. "These days, everyone needs to be responsible for their own expenses, even family. Actually, especially family, we should be honest about these things." I looked around the table slowly. Uncle Robert studied his plate with sudden intense interest. Aunt Patty murmured something about independence at our age being important. A couple of Carter's colleagues nodded slightly as if saying, "That makes sense." Not one person spoke in my defense. Not one person said, "Carter, how can you speak to your mother this way?" Not one person asked, "Are you seriously suggesting your mother pay you rent on Christmas?" The silence pressed down on me like a physical weight. I felt every one of my 62 years in that moment. My knees ached, my back throbbed, my hands, spotted with age and wrinkled from decades of work, trembled as I carefully set down the serving spoon. 47 years. That's how long Thomas and I had been building our life. How long we'd saved, invested, constructed an empire from 2 construction workers with a dream and a metal box full of cash hidden under the bed. And in that moment, standing in my own dining room, I felt it all evaporate in the recycled air of the penthouse ventilation system. I folded my napkin carefully, placed it beside my untouched plate. The china made a soft clink that seemed loud in the stillness. "Thank you all for coming," I said. My voice surprised me. It was calm, steady, without a hint of the chaos roaring through my mind. "This will probably be the last Christmas dinner I spend in this house." Carter blinked, confused. "Mom, you don't have to be so dramatic. We're just talking about being realistic." "You're right, Carter," I interrupted, looking directly into his eyes. Thomas's eyes. "It's time to be realistic." I turned and walked toward the hallway that led to my bedroom. Behind me, I heard uncomfortable murmurs, the scraping of chairs, someone trying to resume conversation with a bright, "So who wants dessert?" I closed my bedroom door. The sound of the latch was soft, but in my head it resonated like the closing of a complete chapter. The bedroom, 8:15 p.m. I sat on the edge of my bed and looked around the room that had been my refuge for the past 4 years. A simple space. Not the master bedroom with its ensuite bathroom and walk-in closet that belonged to Carter and Vivian. This was the guest room, a double bed, an antique wardrobe, 2 picture frames on the nightstand. I picked up one of the frames. Thomas and me, 2003, standing in front of our first building in Chelsea. I was 41 years old in that photo, wearing a simple floral dress, my hair still dark, then pulled back in a ponytail. Thomas held ceremonial scissors ready to cut the ribbon. Behind us, a modest 4-story building. Our first dream realized. How did I get here? The question whispered through my mind like smoke. How did I go from that confident woman cutting ribbons to this invisible servant pouring wine for people who couldn't see me? Let me tell you the truth. The truth no one at that table knew. Flashback 1989. Where it began, Thomas and I met in rural Virginia. I was 23, cleaning houses for wealthy families in Richmond. He was 26, working construction, his hands permanently stained with concrete dust and calluses. We got married 6 months later in a simple ceremony at the town church. Our honeymoon was a weekend in Virginia Beach, sharing a motel room that cost $39 a night. When Carter was born in 1992, we were living in a 400-square-foot studio in Queens. Thomas worked construction 12 hours a day. I did bookkeeping for small businesses from home, Carter sleeping in a bassinet beside my desk. Every dollar we earned went into a metal box we hid under the bed. No splurges, no vacations, just work saving and a dream. It took us 11 years of counting pennies, of saying no to dinner invitations, because we'd already eaten, of buying clothes from thrift stores, of watching Carter grow up in that tiny studio apartment, sharing our bed until he was 6 because there wasn't space for another. In 2003, we finally bought our first property, a rundown apartment in Chelsea, for $95,000. We renovated it ourselves. Thomas installed the plumbing. I painted the walls. Carter, at 11 years old, handed us tools and asked 1,000 questions about why we were doing this. Because someday Buddy Thomas told him, "This will belong to us. Not a landlord, us." We rented it to a young couple for $850 a month. That money went into another box, then another property, then another. Thomas had a gift. He could look at an abandoned building and see exactly what it could become. I had a different gift I could make. Numbers multiply, could spot deals others missed, could negotiate with the sharpness I'd learned from years of making every dollar stretch. By 2010, we owned 12 properties. By 2015, 32. We incorporated as Anderson Properties, LLC in 2004 on the advice of our lawyer, who said we needed legal protection. "What should we call it?" Thomas had asked, sitting in our tiny office, a converted storage room in one of our buildings. I looked out the window at the New York skyline. "Anderson Properties," I said simply. "We built it. It should have our name." We survived the 2008 financial crisis by buying when others panicked. We acquired commercial spaces in the Upper East Side residential buildings in Brooklyn, renovated warehouses in Red Hook. By 2017, Anderson Properties had a portfolio worth $38 million. And then, on a rainy Tuesday in November 2019, Thomas put his hand to his chest while reviewing blueprints in our office. "Scarlett," he said. "Just my name." Then he fell. "Massive heart attack," the doctors said. "He didn't suffer," they added, as if that was supposed to comfort me. Back to present, 8:35 p.m. I opened my nightstand drawer and pulled out a manila folder. Inside were documents no one in this house knew existed. Articles of Incorporation, Anderson Properties, LLC. Shareholders Scarlett Anderson 85%, James Torres 15%. Property deed penthouse 234 East 70th Street. Owner Anderson Properties, LLC. Vehicle registration Cadillac Escalade. Registered owner Anderson Properties, LLC. Authorized user temporary Carter Anderson. Credit card statement. Primary account holder Scarlett Anderson. Authorized user Vivian Reed Anderson. I flipped through the pages slowly, my reading glasses slipping down my nose. Each document was a reminder of what Thomas and I had built. What I had allowed my son to believe was his achievement. Another flashback. 4 years ago, Carter had just finished his architecture degree. He'd gotten a job at Morrison & Associates, a respectable firm salary of $65,000 a year. Good for a New York starting position, but not enough for the lifestyle he'd grown up watching in Manhattan. He came to visit me at the Anderson Properties office. I kept a low profile, working from a small office in the back while James handled the public-facing work as COO. Easier that way. No one expected an elderly woman in sensible shoes to be running a multi-million-dollar company. "Mom," Carter said, sitting across from my desk, "I want to move out on my own. I found a place in the Upper East Side, but it's $4,200 a month. With my salary, that's impossible." I looked at my son. He had Thomas's determination in his eyes. But there was also a naivety there, a softness that came from never having to fight for anything the way we had. I opened the Anderson Properties system on my computer. "We have a penthouse available on East 70th Street, I told him. 2,000 square feet, just renovated. Market value is $6,800 a month. His eyes widened. "Mom, that's way out of my budget." "I'll rent it to you for $1,850, I said. "Internal discount, employee rate." "Seriously?" His face lit up like he was 10 years old again. "But won't you need it for other—" I'm fine in my apartment in Chelsea. I lied. The truth was that apartment was also mine, but he didn't know it. You deserve a nice place, Carter. You worked hard for that degree. He signed the lease that week, never asked who owned Anderson Properties, never questioned the employee discount. 2 months later, Vivian appeared an influencer with 120,000 Instagram followers and an eye for luxury. I watched her post photos of the penthouse. My architect boyfriend has impeccable taste, #penthouselife.nyc. When they got married, I gave Carter a credit card. Just for emergencies, I said. Emergencies became Michelin star dinners, became 2,400 handbags, became weekend trips to Miami. I paid every bill in silence, never said a word. And when Carter asked if he could use one of the company vehicles, just until I save up for my own car, James signed the authorization that I approved from my back office. It's temporary, I told James, just until he gets on his feet. 4 years later, that temporary was still his daily driver. Present, 9:20 p.m., my phone buzzed. A text from James Torres. Everything okay? Haven't heard from you. James. 60-year-old James, who'd been Thomas's right-hand man since 2005. Who became my business partner and closest confidant after Thomas died. The only person who knew the full truth about my role in Anderson Properties. I texted back, need to see you tomorrow morning. Early. Bring the files. His response came immediately. Which files? Carter's. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, Scarlett, are you sure? I looked at the documents spread across my bed. At the photo of Thomas and me in front of our first building. At my reflection in the dark window, a 62-year-old woman who'd spent 4 years making herself invisible. Completely sure, I typed. It's time my son learned what the word realistic actually means. 10:30 p.m. Carter's perspective. Carter couldn't sleep. Vivian was beside him, scrolling through her phone, the blue light illuminating her face in the darkness. Your mother was dramatic tonight, Vivian said without looking up. Yeah, Carter stared at the ceiling. Something felt wrong, but he couldn't identify what. She'll cool down. She always does. You weren't too harsh, were you? No, he said, trying to convince himself. It's reasonable. She's been living here rent-free for 4 years. And with your Instagram growing, we need to think about cash flow. The algorithm favors consistency, and consistency costs money. Vivian hummed agreement, still scrolling. Carter's phone lit up on the nightstand. He reached for it. 3 missed calls from his mother. No voicemails. 1 text message sent at 9:47 p.m. I'm fine. Don't worry about me. Focus on your life. Something about that message made his stomach clench. It wasn't like his mother to text so late. Wasn't like her to say don't worry. Usually she called him multiple times a day asking about his work, offering to cook dinner, checking if he needed anything. This felt final somehow. He pulled up Google on his phone. Typed Scarlett Anderson, New York. The results showed an obituary for his father from 2019. A few mentions in local Virginia news from the 1990s. Nothing else. He tried Anderson Properties NYC. A company website appeared. Corporate structure. Portfolio of properties. Executive team. James Torres, COO, smiling in a professional headshot. Carter scrolled down. Board of Directors section. His thumb froze. There, without a photo, just a name, Scarlett Anderson, founder and principal. He sat up so fast, Vivian jumped. What's wrong? Nothing. I need to check something. He opened LinkedIn, searched Anderson Properties employees, scrolled through dozens of names. Accountants, property managers, maintenance staff. Near the bottom, Scarlett Anderson, principal shareholder. His hands started shaking. He clicked on Google Images, typed Anderson Properties ribbon cutting. Photos appeared. Buildings, ceremonies. And there in a photo from 2015, slightly out of focus in the background, his mother, wearing a professional pantsuit, talking to 2 men in suits who were clearly listening with deference. The photo caption, Anderson Properties, celebrates Harborview Complex opening. Pictured COO James Torres Center with members of the founding family. Founding family. Carter's mind raced. The employee discount on rent. The company car. The credit card that never seemed to have a limit. With trembling fingers, he pulled up his lease agreement. He'd signed it 4 years ago and never looked at it again. Lessor Anderson Properties, LLC. He searched his email for the original documents. Found the attachments. Opened the corporate filing. Anderson Properties LLC. Shareholders: Scarlett Anderson, 85%, James Torres, 15%. The room spun. Carter, what's going on? Vivian's voice sounded far away. He looked at her. At the red dress hanging on the closet door, $2,600 charged to the credit card. At the Rolex on his wrist, $8,400. At the penthouse around them, his affordable apartment. Oh my God, he whispered. It's all hers. 10:45 p.m. Grandmother's house, Brooklyn Heights. Carter drove through the empty Christmas night streets, breaking every speed limit. He needed answers. He needed someone to tell him this was a mistake, a misunderstanding. His grandmother Dorothy answered the door in her bathrobe, surprised. Carter, it's almost 11. Grandma, I need to ask you something. He pushed past her into the familiar living room. Did you know about Anderson Properties, about Mom? Dorothy's expression changed. Surprise melted into something else. Understanding. Maybe even relief. You finally figured it out, she said softly. You knew? His voice cracked. This whole time. Of course I knew, sweetheart. I watched your mother and father build that company from nothing. I was there when they bought their first property. I babysat you while they worked 18-hour days renovating apartments. Carter sank onto the couch. Why didn't anyone tell me? Dorothy sat beside him, her arthritic hands folding in her lap. Because your mother didn't want you to know. She wanted you to make something of yourself first, to find your own way without the shadow of money hanging over you. But she let me believe. He couldn't finish the sentence. What, that you were supporting her, that you were the successful one? Dorothy's voice was gentle but firm. Yes, she did. And you believed it quite easily, didn't you? The words stung because they were true. The penthouse, he asked weakly. Hers. Market value $6,800 a month. She charged you $1,850. She's been subsidizing your rent for 4 years. The Cadillac, company vehicle. She pays all the costs. Insurance, maintenance, registration. The credit card. Dorothy pulled out her phone, opened her email, and showed him a forwarded message. Credit card statement. Primary holder Scarlett Anderson. Authorized user Vivian Reed Anderson. 6-month total $47,320. Carter felt nauseous. I told her to pay rent, he whispered. In her own house, in front of 20 people. Yes, Dorothy said simply. You did. Grandma, I didn't know. That's the problem, Carter. Her voice was still kind, but there was steel underneath. You never asked. You just assumed. You let her serve dinner while you boasted about your hard work. You let her fade into the background like she didn't matter. He put his head in his hands. What have I done? Dorothy was quiet for a long moment. Then she placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. You made a mistake, sweetheart. A big one. But mistakes can be fixed. The question is, are you ready to do what it takes to fix it? Carter looked up at his grandmother. At 84 years old, she still had the sharpest eyes he'd ever seen. Eyes that saw through excuses and self-deception. I don't even know where to start, he admitted. Well, Dorothy said, standing up slowly, her knees creaking. The first step is usually the hardest. You'll need to figure out who you are without your mother's safety net, who you really are when everything is stripped away. She walked to her bookshelf and pulled down a photo album, flipped to a picture of Carter at 6 years old, sitting in the tiny Queen studio apartment surrounded by his parents. You came from people who built something from nothing, she said. Your father was a construction worker. Your mother cleaned houses. They saved for 11 years to buy their first property. 11 years Carter, living in 400 square feet, eating rice and beans, wearing secondhand clothes. She closed the album. You've never struggled. Not really. Your mother made sure of that. She wanted you to have opportunities she didn't have. But somewhere along the way, you forgot where you came from. You forgot what real work means. Carter stared at the photo. He didn't remember that apartment. His first memories were of the nicer place they moved to when he was 7. By the time he was in high school, they had a house in Westchester. He'd gone to good schools, summer camps, college without loans. He'd never questioned where the money came from. He just assumed his parents were comfortable. What do I do now? He asked. Dorothy sat back down. That's not for me to answer, sweetheart. But I'll tell you what your mother is probably doing right now. She's making decisions, hard decisions, decisions that are going to change your life whether you're ready for them or not. Carter's phone buzzed. An email notification. Subject lease termination notice. 234 E 70th Street, Sender Anderson Properties Management. His hands shook as he opened it. Dear Mr. Anderson, this letter serves as formal notice that your lease agreement for the above property will not be renewed upon expiration on January 31st, 2024. Current monthly rent, $1,850 market rate for comparable units, $6,800. Please arrange to vacate the premises by the stated date. If you wish to discuss alternative arrangements, contact our office at your earliest convenience. Regards Anderson Properties, LLC. Carter read it 3 times. The words didn't change. He looked up at his grandmother. She's evicting me. Dorothy's expression didn't change. No, sweetheart. She's setting you free. December 26, 2023, 9:17 a.m. a.m. Carter opened his laptop at the dining table, his coffee growing cold beside him. Vivian was still asleep. She'd stayed up until 3 in the morning, posting about the drama on her private Instagram story, though she'd been careful not to mention specifics. His inbox had 47 unread emails, holiday sales, LinkedIn notifications, and one that made his heart stop. Subject vehicle return request. Immediate action required. He opened it with shaking hands. Dear Mr. Anderson, this letter serves to inform you that the temporary authorization for use of the Cadillac Escalade license plate 7HJ2983 property of Anderson Properties, LLC is hereby revoked effective December 27, 2023. Please arrange return of the vehicle to our facility at 425 Park Avenue within 48 hours. Failure to comply will result in recovery of the asset through appropriate legal channels. Sincerely, Asset Management Department, Anderson Properties, LLC. Carter read it 3 times. Then he walked to the window and looked down at the street 7 floors below. The gray Escalade sat in its reserved spot, gleaming in the winter morning light. Not his car. Had never been his car. His phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Mr. Anderson, this is Patricia from Chase Bank Card Services. I'm calling about an account ending in 4829. Yes? His mouth went dry. The primary account holder, Ms. Scarlett Anderson, has requested cancellation of all authorized user cards effective immediately. Your card ending in 4829 will be deactivated within 2 hours. If you have any automatic payments linked to this account, please update them with an alternative payment method. The call ended. Carter stood there, phone in hand, as the reality crashed over him like a wave. The apartment, the car, the credit card. In less than 12 hours, his mother had dismantled the entire infrastructure of his life. Carter Vivian appeared in the bedroom doorway, wrapped in a silk robe he now realized cost $340. He knew because he'd seen the charge last month. Why are you up so early? We need to talk, he said. Same morning. Scarlett's perspective. I sat in James's office at Anderson Properties headquarters, watching the morning sun paint Park Avenue in shades of gold. My hands were steady on the armrests of the leather chair. I'd barely slept, but I felt more awake than I had in years. These are the documents you requested. James slid a folder across his desk. He looked concerned, his gray hair slightly disheveled as if he'd rushed to the office. Scarlett, I need to ask one more time. Are you absolutely certain about this? I opened the folder. Inside were 3 sets of papers. Document 1, lease termination notice, already sent. Document 2, vehicle recovery authorization, scheduled for tomorrow morning. Document 3, credit card cancellation confirmation. Carter spent $47,000 in 6 months, I said quietly, looking at the statement. Vivian spent $94,000 over 2 years. They live in a home worth $6.8 million and pay $1,850 a month. And last night my son looked me in the eye and told me to pay rent or leave. He didn't know? That's exactly the problem, James. I met his eyes. He didn't know because I never told him. I thought I was protecting him, teaching him humility by letting him think he was making it on his own. Instead, I taught him that everything comes easy. That success requires no sacrifice. I stood and walked to the window. From here, I could see the building where Carter worked. Morrison & Associates' 15th floor. Another piece of the puzzle he didn't know about. Tell me about the Morrison contract, I said. James sighed. Scarlett, that's not... Tell me. He opened his laptop, pulled up a file. Anderson Properties has contracted Morrison & Associates for design work since 2019. We're their largest client. approximately 40% of their annual revenue. And Carter's hiring in 2021. James was quiet for a moment. There were 3 candidates for the senior architect position. The other 2 had more experience. We suggested that Morrison consider fresh talent. We mentioned Carter by name. David Morrison is a smart man. He understood the implication. I closed my eyes. So even his job is... He's good at what he does, James said quickly. The work he's produced is solid. Morrison wouldn't have kept him if he wasn't competent. But did we open the door? Yes. I turned back to face him. Include that in the file. I want Carter to know everything, every advantage he's had without realizing it. This will devastate him. Good, I said and meant it. Devastation builds character. Comfort builds entitlement. James studied me for a long moment. Thomas would be proud of you. You know that, right? My throat tightened. Thomas would have done this 3 years ago. I'm the one who waited too long. December 27, 2023, 2:30 p.m., Carter's perspective. 2 men in Anderson Properties uniforms stood in the parking garage, clipboards in hand. Carter had come down to move the Escalade, thinking maybe he could explain something. Mr. Anderson, the older man, maybe 55, extended his hand professionally. I'm Marcus from Asset Recovery. We're here to collect the vehicle. I understand there's been a mistake, Carter started. I've been using this car for 4 years. It was given to me by Anderson Properties, sir, as temporary authorization for business use. Marcus showed him the document. Here's your signature from April 2021. The authorization was always listed as revocable at any time. Carter stared at his own signature. Had he even read the document before signing? He honestly couldn't remember. What if I want to buy it? He asked desperately. The vehicle's current market value is approximately $48,000. If you'd like to make an offer, you can contact our sales department. $48,000. Carter's savings account had 4 or 200s in it. He handed over the keys. Watched the Escalade drive away, carrying with it another piece of the illusion he'd been living. His phone buzzed. Vivian, at Bergdorf. Card isn't working. Call me ASAP. He didn't call. Just texted back card was canceled. Use your own. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. What do you mean my card? We don't have money for this. Carter looked at that text for a long time. We don't have money for this. 4 years of marriage, and she'd never asked where the money came from. Never questioned how an architect making $65,000 could afford a penthouse, a luxury car, unlimited shopping. Because she hadn't wanted to know. And neither had he. January 5th, 2024. Apartment hunting. The real estate agent, a young man with too much gel in his hair and a practiced smile, unlocked the door to apartment 4B in Astoria, Queens. Here we are, he said brightly. Studio 420 square feet, recently renovated. Carter stepped inside. The studio was smaller than his current walk-in closet. A galley kitchen with appliances that looked like they were from the 1990s. A bathroom with pink tiles that were definitely original to the building. One window overlooking an air shaft. How much, he asked, though he already knew from the listing. $1,750 a month plus utilities. Usually runs about $200 for electric and gas. $1,750. His monthly take-home after taxes was $300-400. Rent would eat half his salary. I'll take it, Carter said. The agent blinked, surprised. Don't you want to see other options? I have a few more in your price range. No, I'll take this one. Because it was available immediately. Because he had until January 31st to leave the penthouse. Because every other apartment he'd seen today had made him want to cry, and at least this one had a window, even if it looked at a brick wall. Great, I'll need first month, last month, and security deposit. That's $5,250 total. Carter's savings account balance, $400 or $200. Can I do first month and security? He asked. $3,500. The agent looked uncomfortable. The landlord is pretty strict about please. Carter heard the desperation in his own voice and hated it. I can get you the rest in 2 weeks. I need this. Something in the agent's expression softened. Maybe he saw dozens of desperate people every day in New York. Maybe Carter's fall from grace was written all over his face. Let me make a call, he said. January 15th, 2024. Moving day, Carter stood in the penthouse living room surrounded by the life he was leaving behind. The movers had taken the few things that were actually his, some clothes, his laptop, a box of books. Everything else, the furniture, the art, the designer kitchen equipment, belonged to the apartment. Belonged to his mother. Vivian sat on the leather sofa scrolling through her phone. They'd barely spoken in 3 weeks. "So this is really happening," she said without looking up. "Yeah. I talked to my parents. I'm going back to Miami for a while." Carter nodded. He'd expected this. "Do you want a divorce?" She finally looked at him. "Yes. But Carter, I'm not trying to be cruel. This just isn't what I signed up for." "I know. When we met, you were this successful architect with a beautiful apartment and an amazing life. I thought we were building something together." "We were building something on my mother's money," Carter said quietly. "I just didn't know it." Vivian's expression flickered, maybe guilt, maybe relief that he understood. "I post lifestyle content. That's my career. The followers, the sponsors, they expect a certain aesthetic. I can't maintain that in a 400-square-foot studio in Queens." "I understand." And he did. Vivian had been honest about what she wanted from the beginning. He was the one who'd lied, even if he hadn't known he was lying. "I don't hate you," she said softly. I need a different life." "I know," he said again. She stood, picked up her designer bag, one of the many charged to Scarlett's credit card, and walked to the door. Paused with her hand on the handle. "For what it's worth, I think your mom is incredible. Building all that and staying humble, I could never." Then she was gone. Carter sat alone in the empty penthouse for another hour, watching the sunset paint Manhattan in shades of orange and gold. This view had been his for 4 years. He'd thought he'd earned it. His phone buzzed. "A text from the moving company truck is downstairs whenever you're ready." He took one last look around. Remembered the Christmas dinner 3 weeks ago. Remembered his mother's face when he'd suggested she pay rent. "I'm sorry, Mom," he whispered to the empty room. Then he left, closing the door behind him for the last time. January 16th, 2024. First night in Astoria. The studio apartment looked even smaller with Carter's belongings in it. 1 air mattress, 1 folding chair from Target, 1 lamp, his clothes hanging in the tiny closet. He sat on the floor eating ramen from a styrofoam cup. The package cost $0.89. He'd bought 20 of them because his grocery budget was now exactly $280 a month, a number he'd calculated obsessively based on his new financial reality. Salary after taxes, $3,400 rent, plus utilities, $1,950. Subway pass, $132. Phone, $75. Internet, $60. Groceries, $280. Total, $2,497 in. Remaining $903, $903 per month for everything else. Clothes, toiletries, emergency expenses, any kind of social life. In his old life, Vivian spent that on a handbag. There was a knock on the door. Carter froze. Who even knew he lived here? He opened it to find an elderly woman, maybe late 60s, holding a covered dish. "Hello, neighbor," she said with a warm smile. "I'm Rosa Martinez. I live in 4C right next door." "Oh, hi, I'm Carter. I heard you moving in today. Thought you might be hungry." She offered the dish. "Arroz con pollo, chicken and rice. Nothing fancy, but it's homemade." Carter stared at the dish, then at this stranger's kind face, and felt something crack inside his chest. "Thank you," he managed. Thank you." "You're welcome, mijo. And if you need anything recommendations for the neighborhood good places to shop, I've lived here for 32 years. I know everything." After she left, Carter sat on his air mattress with the dish of rice and chicken. It was delicious, simple, homemade, the kind of food his mother used to make before she became invisible in his penthouse kitchen. He ate slowly, savoring every bite, and for the first time in weeks, he didn't feel completely alone. February 14th, 2024, Valentine's Day. Carter met Vivian at a coffee shop in Midtown. She'd agreed to sign the divorce papers, and he'd offered to bring them to her since she was in the city visiting a friend. She looked different. Still beautiful, still polished, but there was a hardness around her eyes that hadn't been there before. "You look tired," she said not unkindly. "I am tired." Carter had been working his day job and staying up until 2 in the morning doing something he'd tell her about in a minute. "How's Miami?" "Good. I'm seeing someone. He's in tech. Startup that just got Series B funding." She said it matter-of-factly without apology. "That's good. I'm glad." They ordered coffee $12 for 2 cups, which Carter now recognized as insane, and sat by the window. "I need to tell you something," Carter said. "I knew about the money. Not at first, but I knew the credit card was your mother's. I saw the statements once. I didn't want to ask questions because I liked the lifestyle." Carter absorbed this. "So we both lied." "In different ways, yeah." She stirred her coffee. "I'm not proud of it, but I'm trying to be honest now. I appreciate that." They signed the papers in silence. No assets to divide everything had been Scarlett's anyway. New York's divorce laws made it simple when there was nothing to fight over. "Can I ask you something?" Vivian said as they stood to leave. "What are you doing with your life now? Like really?" Carter hesitated. "I'm designing affordable housing." "For your firm?" "No, pro bono. There's a nonprofit called Build Hope NYC. They convert abandoned buildings into family housing. I'm doing the architectural work for free." Vivian's eyebrows rose. "Why?" "Because it matters. Because for the first time in my life, I'm doing work that isn't about me." Something shifted in her expression. "Your mom would be proud of that." "Maybe," Carter said. "I haven't talked to her in 2 months." "You should." "I don't know if she wants to hear from me." Vivian touched his arm briefly. "Carter, she didn't do all this to destroy you. She did it to save you. Trust me, I understand now what I couldn't see before. Your mother is the strongest woman I've ever met, and she loves you enough to let you hate her if that's what it takes for you to grow up." She left, and Carter sat alone with his coffee, thinking about those words. March 20th, 2024. Build Hope construction site. The warehouse in the South Bronx was a disaster. Broken windows, graffiti, structural issues that made Carter's professional eye twitch. But Elena Vasquez, the 42-year-old director of Build Hope NYC, walked through it like she was touring a palace. "I know it looks rough," she said, her breath visible in the cold air. "But I see 15 families, Carter. 15 families who are homeless right now, sleeping in shelters, moving from couch to couch. I see kids doing homework under streetlights because the shelter is too loud. I see parents working 3 jobs and still not able to afford first month, last month, and security deposit." Carter looked around with fresh eyes, saw past the decay to the bones of the building. Good foundation, solid walls, high ceilings that could be opened up with skylights. "We can work with this," he said slowly. Elena's face lit up. "Really?" "Yeah, I see modular units 530 square feet each. Shared courtyard in the center for natural light. We can use reclaimed materials to keep costs down. If we're smart about the design, we can do this for $30,000 per unit." "Carter, I don't have money to pay you." "I know. I don't need payment. I need purpose." And he meant it. Working on this project, getting his hands dirty with actual problems instead of luxury demands, felt like waking up after a long sleep. April 10, 2024. The realization. Carter was working late at his desk, the folding table he'd bought from IKEA for $29 when his email pinged. Subject: architectural opportunity, social impact project. He opened it, suspicious of spam. "Mr. Anderson, my name is Elena Vasquez. I run a nonprofit called Build Hope NYC. Your name was recommended by a colleague as someone interested in affordable housing design." Wait, he already knew Elena. They'd been working together for 3 weeks. Why was she sending this email now dated, He checked the timestamp. April 10, 2024, 11:47 p.m. He kept reading. "We're seeking an architect for a pro bono project converting an abandoned warehouse in South Bronx into 15 family units. Budget $0 for design volunteer, timeline 3 months design, 6 months construction, impact 15 families currently homeless." Carter's heart began to pound. This was the email Elena had sent him in January, the one that had started everything. But he hadn't received it in January. He'd found Build Hope through a random Google search after Vivian left, desperate to find something meaningful to do with his free time. Or had he? He pulled up his email history, searched Build Hope. The first message appeared, dated January 8, 2024. But he'd sworn he hadn't seen it until March. Had ignored it, maybe deleted it by accident. He looked closer at the sender, Elena Vasquez at buildhopenic.org. Then he noticed something in the CC line he'd never paid attention to before: James Torres at Anderson Properties. James Torres, his mother's business partner. Carter's hands started shaking. He opened a new Google search. Build Hope NYC funding sources. The nonprofit's website loaded. He clicked on Our Partners. A list of donors appeared. New York Community Trust, $50,000. Robin Hood Foundation, $75,000. Anderson Properties Foundation, $200,000. Anderson Properties Foundation. He clicked the link. A simple page opened. The Anderson Properties Foundation provides grants for affordable housing initiatives in New York City. Founded by Scarlett Anderson in 2020, the foundation focuses on projects that create dignity through shelter. Board of Directors. Scarlett Anderson, President. James Torres, Vice President. Elena Vasquez, Community Representative. Carter sat back in his folding chair, the cheap metal creaking under his weight. His mother hadn't just cut him off. She'd engineered his redemption. The email to Elena. The Build Hope connection. Even the nonprofit itself, founded in 2020, the same year he'd gotten married and started living in the penthouse. She'd been preparing for this moment. Preparing for the day she'd have to teach him what real work meant. And she'd made sure there was a path forward. Not an easy one, not handed to him, but a chance to build something real. Carter pulled up his phone, opened his mother's contact. They hadn't spoken since Christmas Eve. He typed, I know what you did. I know about Build Hope. I know you've been watching. 3 dots appeared. His heart hammered. Then not watching. Hoping. There's a difference. Mom, his vision blurred with tears. He typed thank you. Her response came quickly. Don't thank me yet. Earn it first. Then we'll talk. April 15th, 2024. The anonymous offer. Carter was on the Build Hope construction site wearing his father's old work boots he'd found in storage when his phone rang. David Morrison, his boss. Carter, I have something unusual. Are you sitting down? I'm standing in a construction site covered in dust, but go ahead. I received a call from an anonymous client. They want an architect for a major affordable housing project. Mixed-use development in Red Hook, Brooklyn. Budget is $12 million. Carter froze. $12 million? The fee for the architect would be $180,000, and Carter, they specifically asked for you. Why me? They mentioned your social impact portfolio. Someone knows about your Build Hope work. Carter looked around the warehouse, at the workers installing windows, at the families who would live here in 6 months, at the project that had given him purpose again. Who's the client, he asked. Anonymous, LLC registered in Delaware. But the development company is called Riverside Holdings, and their legal representation is Torres Legal Group. Torres. I need to think about it, Carter said. Carter, this is a career maker. $180,000. I said I need to think about it. He hung up and sat down on a stack of lumber, pulled out his phone and stared at his mother's last message. Earn it first, then we'll talk. This was another test. He knew it in his bones. The question was, what was the right answer? Scarlett's perspective. Same evening, I sat in my Upper West Side apartment, my real home, not the penthouse Carter had thought I lived in, with a cup of tea and James on speakerphone. He got the offer, James said. Morrison called him this afternoon. And he said he needs to think about it. I smiled. A year ago, Carter would have accepted immediately, would have seen the money, the prestige, the opportunity to rebuild his career. That's growth, I said quietly. Scarlett, what if he says no? What if he chooses to stay with Build Hope, keep doing pro bono work? Then he's learned the lesson, and I'll know he's ready. Ready for what? I looked at the framed photo on my mantle. Thomas and me, 2003, in front of our first building. We'd been so young then, so hungry, so certain that building something meaningful mattered more than building wealth. Carter needed to understand that fire, needed to feel it in his bones before I could trust him with the empire Thomas and I had built. Ready to come home, I said, but on his terms, not mine. James was quiet for a moment. And if he takes the offer, if he does the project for the money, then I'll give him the project. Let him prove himself. Either way, he wins, James. That's the point. I'm not trying to punish him anymore. I'm trying to teach him that there are different kinds of winning. After we hung up, I sat in the dark apartment sipping my tea, waiting for my son to make his choice. April 20th, 2024. Carter's decision. Carter sat across from Elena Vasquez in the Build Hope office, a repurposed storage room with folding tables and donated computers. I need to tell you something, he said. I got an offer for a big project, $12 million development. The fee is $180,000. Elena's face didn't change. That's wonderful, Carter. You should take it. It would mean stepping back from Build Hope. I couldn't do both. I understand. This is your career. Elena, he leaned forward. I know my mother is funding this nonprofit. I know she's on the board. I know this whole thing was set up to teach me something. Elena met his eyes steadily. What do you think she's trying to teach you? That there are things more valuable than money. And do you believe that Carter thought about the past 4 months? Sleeping on an air mattress, eating ramen, walking 40 minutes to save subway fare, standing in this warehouse watching it transform from abandoned space to family homes. He thought about Carmen Ramirez, 34 years old, with 3 kids who'd cried when he showed her the design for her future apartment. My babies will have their own room, she'd whispered. They'll have a kitchen where I can cook for them. Yes, he said. I believe it. And I'm saying no to the other offer. Elena smiled. That wasn't a test, Carter. Your mother didn't send that offer. David Morrison did. He has a real client willing to pay real money for your work. Carter blinked. What at? Your mother hasn't contacted me about you since January. She asked me to give you a chance, then she stepped back completely. Everything you've built here, you did on your own. But Mo, call her, Elena said gently. I think you're both ready. April 20th, 2024, 8:47 p.m. Carter sat on his air mattress, phone in hand, staring at his mother's contact information. The name on the screen just said Mom, with a photo from 5 years ago, her and him at his college graduation, both smiling, both unaware of the distance that would grow between them. His finger hovered over the call button. 4 months, 116 days since Christmas Eve, since the worst thing he'd ever said to another human being. He pressed call. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Carter's heart hammered so hard he could hear it in his ears. Hello, Carter. Her voice, steady calm with that slight rasp she'd developed in her 60s. The voice that had read him bedtime stories, cheered at his baseball games, told him she loved him 1,000 times. Mom, his voice cracked. I don't know where to start. The beginning is usually best, she said gently. He laughed, a wet, broken sound. I don't even know where the beginning is anymore. I thought I knew my life. Thought I knew who I was. Turns out I was wrong about everything. Silence on the other end. Not hostile, just waiting. I've found out about Anderson Properties, he said. About the penthouse being yours, the car, the credit card. My job Morrison told me about the contract pressure. And Build Hope. I know you fund it. I know Elena is on your foundation board. Yes, Scarlett said simply. Why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me believe that you were successful on your own? Her voice was still gentle, but there was steel underneath. Because you needed to believe it, Carter. For a while. I thought if I gave you advantages without you knowing you'd develop confidence. Independence. I was wrong. Carter pressed his palm against his eyes. I was such an asshole. You were entitled. There's a difference. Entitlement is learned, Carter. I taught it to you by giving you everything without making you understand what it cost. I told you to pay rent in your own house. Yes, you did. She paused. In front of 20 people, while I was serving dinner, wearing an apron stained with gravy from cooking all day for guests who couldn't even see me. The words landed like blows. Carter had replayed that night 1,000 times, but hearing it from her perspective made it real in a way his guilt hadn't. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry, Mom. I don't know how to stop, she said firmly. I don't want your apologies, Carter. I want your growth. And from what Elena tells me, you're finally finding it. You talked to Elena. She called me yesterday, said you turned down a $180,000 project to keep working on Build Hope, said you chose 15 homeless families over career advancement. Carter swallowed hard. I didn't know you knew about that. I didn't orchestrate it, if that's what you're wondering. That was a real offer from a real client. You made a real choice. The first truly selfless choice I've seen you make in years. Tears streamed down Carter's face. I'm trying, Mom. I'm trying to be the person you and Dad would be proud of. Your father would already be proud, Scarlett said softly. He never cared about money, Carter. He cared about building things that mattered. Do you remember what he used to say? Buildings should serve people, not impress them. Exactly. And you're finally building something that serves people. They were both quiet for a moment. Carter could hear traffic in the background on her end. She wasn't at the penthouse, he realized. She'd never lived there. Where was her real home? Mom, where are you? Upper West Side. I have a 2-bedroom apartment. Nothing fancy. But it's mine and it's real, and I can look around it without feeling like I'm living a lie. Can I see you? The words tumbled out before he could stop them. Please, I know I don't deserve. Build Hope is having a ribbon-cutting ceremony in September, isn't it? Yes, September 15th. Then I'll see you there, Scarlett said. Not as the CEO of Anderson Properties, not as the investor, just as a mother who wants to see what her son built with his own hands. You'll come? I'll be there. But Carter, yes. Keep building. Keep choosing purpose over profit. Keep learning what real work means. Because when we do talk again, really talk, I need to know that you understand the difference between having privileges and deserving them. I understand, he said. Or I'm starting to. That's all I can ask. The call ended. Carter sat in his tiny studio apartment surrounded by the evidence of his humbled life and felt something he hadn't felt in months, hope. September 15, 2024, 10:30 a.m., South Bronx. The morning sun painted the transformed warehouse in shades of gold. Where there had been broken windows and graffiti 5 months ago, there now stood a beautiful residential building. 15 family units with large windows, a central courtyard garden, and a community room where kids could do homework. 200 people crowded the sidewalk. Families who would live here, local politicians, press, nonprofit leaders. Carter stood near the front wearing a simple suit bought secondhand from a thrift store in Astoria for $45. His hands shook slightly as he looked at his notes. Public speaking had never been his strength, but today he needed to find the words. Good morning. He began, his voice amplified by the small microphone. 8 months ago, I lost everything. The crowd quieted. I lost my home, my car, my marriage, my pride. What I found was purpose. He looked at the building, at the families standing near their new front doors, keys in hand. These 15 families taught me more about architecture than 5 years of college. Carmen Ramirez taught me that 530 square feet can hold infinite dreams when designed with love. Miguel Santos, our head contractor, taught me that the hands that build matter more than the name on the blueprint. My neighbor, Rosa Martinez, who's here today, taught me that community is built one meal at a time. Rosa, standing near the back, wiped her eyes with a tissue. This building isn't mine, Carter continued. It belongs to these families. I was just lucky enough to help make it real. Lucky enough to learn that the most important question an architect can ask isn't, how can I make this impressive, but how can I make this serve people? He paused, scanning the crowd, and then he saw her. Scarlett stood in the back, partially hidden behind a group of taller people. She wore a simple navy dress and sunglasses, clearly trying to stay unnoticed. But Carter would recognize her anywhere, the way she stood, the tilt of her head, the hands clasped in front of her. Their eyes met across the crowd. She nodded once. Just once. But in that nod, Carter saw everything: forgiveness, pride, love. He finished his speech somehow, though later he wouldn't remember the words. Elena and Carmen's youngest daughter helped him cut the ribbon. The crowd applauded. Families moved toward their new homes, voices excited, children running. Carter made his way through the crowd, accepting handshakes and congratulations. But his eyes never left the spot where his mother stood. When he finally reached her, they faced each other in silence. You came, he said. I said I would. She removed her sunglasses, and he saw that her eyes were bright with unshed tears. You did good work here, Carter. Thank you. That means... His voice caught. That means everything. Scarlett looked at the building, at the families moving boxes into their new homes, at the children playing in the courtyard. Your father would have loved this, she said softly. He always said the best buildings are the ones that change lives, not skylines. I wish he was here. He is, in the work, in the purpose. She turned back to him. And in you when you choose to honor what he believed. They stood together, mother and son, watching the families settle into their new homes. After a long moment, Scarlett spoke again. There's something else, Carter. Something I need to tell you. His stomach clenched. What mid? Walk with me. 11:30 a.m., coffee shop 3 blocks away. They sat in a small Dominican coffee shop, the kind with plastic chairs and strong café con leche for $2. Scarlett had ordered for both of them without asking. She still remembered he took his coffee with cream and 1 sugar. She pulled an envelope from her purse and set it on the table between them. What's this? Carter asked. The answer to a question you haven't asked yet. She pushed it toward him. Open it when you're ready. But first I need to tell you about a decision I made 3 years ago. Carter's hands wrapped around his coffee cup. Okay. When you and Vivian got married, I knew I was going to test you eventually. I knew you needed to learn what I'd failed to teach you. That money without character is just paper. So I started preparing. Preparing how? I established the Anderson Properties Foundation in 2020, endowed it with $5 million. The purpose was to fund affordable housing projects, real ones like Build Hope. I put Elena on the board specifically because she understood what we were trying to do. Carter absorbed this. You planned this for 3 years. Not exactly planned, more like prepared for the possibility. I hoped I'd never need to use it. Hoped you'd wake up on your own, see what you were becoming. But when you told me to pay rent at Christmas... She trailed off, her hand trembling slightly as she lifted her coffee cup. Carter noticed for the first time how much older she looked. The gray in her hair, the lines around her eyes, the slight stoop in her shoulders. When had his mother become elderly? I realized I'd waited too long, Scarlett continued, that my silence had enabled your entitlement. So I made a choice. I could keep enabling you, or I could love you enough to let you fall. You chose the fall. I chose your growth, even knowing it would hurt both of us. Carter looked at the envelope. What's in here? Open it later, when you're alone. But I'll tell you part of it now. There's a job offer, a real one. Anderson Properties is expanding our affordable housing division. We need a director, someone who understands architecture, but also understands the heart behind it. His pulse quickened. You're offering me a job. Not a favor, a job. With a fair salary, no special privileges, but a chance to change hundreds of lives. The question is whether you're interested. Mom, Don't answer now. Read what's in the envelope first. Talk to Elena. Talk to Rosa. Think about whether you're ready to work for me and whether you can handle the fact that I'll be your boss, not just your mother. She stood up, leaving money on the table for both coffees. One more thing, she said. There's a letter in that envelope. Your father wrote it a year before he died. He had a premonition. He knew his heart was weak. He wanted you to have it when you were ready. Carter's throat tightened. Why didn't you give it to me before? Because you weren't ready. But you are now. She touched his shoulder briefly, the first physical contact they'd had in 9 months, and then she was gone, disappearing into the New York morning crowd. That night, Carter's apartment. Carter sat on his air mattress. He still hadn't bought a real bed, putting every spare dollar into savings, and opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside were 3 items. 1, a formal job offer from Anderson Properties. 2, legal documents for something called the Thomas Anderson Memorial Fund. 3, a letter in his father's handwriting. He started with the letter tears, already blurring his vision. Dear Carter, if you're reading this, your mother has decided you're ready. And if she's decided that, then I know you've gone through something difficult. Something that broke you down so you could build yourself back up. I'm writing this in November 2018. The doctors say my heart is weak. They give me medications, tell me to reduce stress, but I know the truth. I'm living on borrowed time. I've made my peace with it. What I can't make peace with is leaving without making sure you understand something crucial. Son, I was a construction worker. Your mother cleaned houses. We came from nothing. And when I say nothing, I mean we shared a studio apartment where you could touch all 4 walls from the center of the room. We ate rice and beans 4 nights a week. We wore secondhand clothes and felt lucky when they fit. But we had a dream. And we had each other. And slowly, painfully, we built something real. By the time you were 10, we had money. By the time you were 15, we were wealthy. And somewhere in there, your mother and I made a choice. We would give you opportunities we never had, but we wouldn't tell you about the money until you'd built something of your own. We thought we were protecting you, teaching you humility. But I worry now that we just confused you, made you think success comes easy, that privilege is the same as achievement. If you're reading this, your mother has corrected that misunderstanding. Probably in a hard way. Probably in a way that hurt. Good. Because, son, the greatest gift anyone can give you isn't money. It's the chance to discover who you are when everything is stripped away. It's the opportunity to build something with your own hands, your own sweat, your own determination. Don't waste this chance. Don't be angry at your mother for taking away what you never earned. Be grateful that she loved you enough to teach you what real work means. Build things that last, not for profit, for people. I love you. I'm proud of you. And I'll be watching wherever I end up, hoping you choose purpose over comfort. Make me proud, kid. Dad. Carter read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down his face, his father's words echoing in the small apartment. Then he opened the legal documents. The Thomas Anderson Memorial Fund for Affordable Housing Purpose, to provide grants for affordable housing projects in New York City and beyond. Endowment, $5,000 to 1,000 trustees, Scarlett Anderson, Carter Anderson, Elena Vasquez. The documents outlined Carter's role, equal voting rights on all grants, responsibility for evaluating architectural proposals, commitment to the mission of creating dignity through shelter. But there was more. A stock certificate fell out of the folder. Anderson Properties, LLC, 15% ownership issued to Carter Anderson. Effective date, January 1, 2025. Conditions: must remain employed in affordable housing sector. Must serve on company board. Cannot sell shares for 10 years. Shares revert to Memorial Fund if conditions not met. A sticky note in his mother's handwriting was attached. This is not a gift. It's a responsibility. These shares represent 15% of a company your father and I built from nothing. You'll earn them by continuing the work you've started, not luxury developments, not maximum profit, but housing that gives families dignity. If you choose a different path, the shares go to the fund. Choose wisely. Mom Carter sat in the darkness of his tiny apartment, surrounded by the evidence of his transformation, the air mattress he'd slept on for 8 months, the folding table where he'd drawn plans for Build Hope, the secondhand clothes hanging in his closet. This was who he'd become when everything was stripped away. And for the first time in his life, he was proud of that person. He pulled out his phone and texted his mother, "I accept the job, and I accept the responsibility, not because of the shares, because it's the right work to do. Can we have dinner? I have so much to learn from you." Her response came quickly. "Thanksgiving. My place. Just us. We have years of conversations to catch up on." Mom, November 28, 2024. Scarlett's apartment, Upper West Side. Carter arrived at his mother's building at 4:00 p.m. carrying a bouquet of flowers he'd bought from a street vendor, $12 a third of what he used to spend without thinking. The building was modest, no doorman, no marble lobby, just a clean pre-war structure with a security buzzer. He pressed 2B. "Come up, sweetheart." His mother's voice crackled through the intercom. The apartment was nothing like the penthouse. It was smaller, warmer lived in. Photos of his father covered every surface. Bookshelves lined the walls. The furniture was comfortable, but not expensive. The kitchen smelled like roasted turkey and apple pie, real cooking, not catered food. Scarlett answered the door in an apron, her hair pulled back, looking more like the mother he remembered from childhood than the invisible servant from Christmas Eve. "Hi, Mom." "Hi, baby." They hugged a real hug, long and tight, making up for 9 months of distance. "Your apartment is beautiful," Carter said, looking around. "It's real," Scarlett replied. "That's all that matters. Come help me with the green beans." They worked side by side in the small kitchen, and Carter felt a peace he hadn't known in years. This was what he'd been missing, not the luxury, not the status symbols, but this simple connection with his mother. "I started at Anderson Properties last week," he said, snapping green beans. "James gave me the tour, showed me your real office." Scarlett smiled. "What did you think?" "I thought it was incredible. And I thought about all the times I walked past that building for my job interview, never knowing you were 3 floors above me." "I watched you sometimes," she admitted. "Through the window. Watched you walk in with your coffee, your confident stride. And I wondered if you'd ever look up and see me." "I'm sorry I didn't see you, Mom. For so many years I didn't see you." She put down her knife and turned to face him. "You see me now. That's what matters." Dinner was simple but perfect: turkey stuffing, green beans, mashed potatoes. No china, no crystal, just regular plates and mismatched glasses. No guests, no performances, just a mother and son talking. "Tell me about the Red Hook project," Scarlett said. I saw the preliminary designs. They're excellent. Carter's face lit up. 32 units. Mixed income 20% market rate subsidizes the other 80. We break ground in March. Your father would be so proud. I wish he could see it. He sees it, Scarlett said firmly. I believe that. And Carter, I need you to know something. When I cut you off when I took away the apartment and the car and everything, it wasn't to punish you. It was to save you. I know that now. Do you really understand that the hardest thing I've ever done was watch you struggle, knowing I could fix it with one phone call and choosing not to? Carter reached across the table and took her hand. Her skin was thin, spotted with age, her fingers trembling slightly. When had his mother's hands become so fragile? I understand, he said. And I'm grateful, because the person I was a year ago, he didn't deserve this. Didn't deserve you. Didn't deserve the legacy Dad built. But I'm trying to become someone who does. Scarlett's eyes filled with tears. You already are, sweetheart. The moment you chose those 15 families over that big paycheck, you became exactly the man your father and I hoped you'd be. They sat in comfortable silence, hands clasped across the table. Mom, can I ask you something? Anything. Why did you stay invisible for so long? Why didn't you take credit for what you built? Scarlett was quiet for a moment, considering. Because your father and I never built it for credit. We built it because we knew what it felt like to struggle to be invisible, to have landlords who didn't care if your heat worked or your roof leaked. We wanted to be different, to create housing that gave people dignity. She paused, looking out the window at the Manhattan skyline. And maybe, she continued, I stayed invisible because as a woman in my 60s, I'd become very good at it. The world stops seeing you at a certain age. You become the grandmother, the widow, the woman who serves the turkey. I let myself disappear into that role because it was easier than fighting to be seen. You're not invisible to me anymore, Carter said fiercely. Not ever again. Scarlett smiled through her tears. Good, because I'm not done yet, Carter. I have work left to do, buildings to develop, families to house, and now I have a son who shares that vision. She stood up and went to her bookshelf, returning with a framed photo Carter had never seen before. It showed Scarlett and Thomas in the 1990s, standing in front of their Queens studio apartment, both wearing work clothes, both looking exhausted, but happy. This is who we were, she said, 2 people with a dream and a metal box full of cash under the bed. Everything we built came from this moment, from choosing to save instead of spend, to work instead of rest, to believe in something bigger than ourselves. She handed him the photo. I want you to keep this. Put it in your office at Anderson Properties. Let it remind you where you came from, where we all came from. Carter looked at the photo at his young parents so full of hope and determination and felt the weight of legacy settle on his shoulders. Not a burden, a responsibility, a gift. I won't let you down, he promised. You already haven't, Scarlett said. The moment you chose to build for others instead of yourself, you honored everything your father and I believed in. November 2026, Red Hook project opening. The Anderson Legacy Residences stood gleaming in the Brooklyn sunlight. 32 family units, 8,000 square feet of community space, a rooftop garden where kids could play and families could gather. Carter, now 34, stood beside his mother at the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Scarlett was 64, semi-retired, but still sharp, still involved, still mentoring young developers who came to her for advice. The plaque they unveiled together read, The Anderson Legacy Residences, 32 families, community-centered living, designed by Carter Anderson, principal architect, developed by Anderson Properties, LLC, funded by the Thomas Anderson Memorial Fund, building dignity through shelter. In memory of Thomas Anderson, 1963 to 2019. Carmen Ramirez's son, now 12 years old, living in Build Hope, and excelling in school, helped them cut the ribbon. The crowd applauded. Families began moving into their new homes. Carter turned to his mother. We did it, Mom. No, Scarlett corrected gently. You did it. I just gave you the tools and the push. Some push. She laughed, that beautiful sound Carter had missed for too long. You needed it. They watched the families exploring their new homes, children running through the courtyard, parents standing in doorways with tears of joy. What's next? Carter asked. Scarlett smiled mysteriously. I've been talking to some developers in Newark. There's an abandoned factory that could become 80 family units. Interested? Always. She linked her arm through his, a simple gesture, but one that meant everything. 2 generations working together, building something that would outlast them both. Your father would be shouting from the rooftops, Scarlett said softly. I hope I'm making him proud. You are, sweetheart. Every single day. As the sun set over Brooklyn, painting the new building in shades of gold and amber, mother and son stood together watching the beginning of something beautiful. Not just a building, but a legacy of love, purpose, and second chances. Final message, Scarlett's voice. If you're reading this and someone has made you feel invisible in a room you built with your own hands, don't wait for them to see you. Stand up, speak up, take back your story. I spent 4 years silent, watching my son treat me like I was insignificant. I thought my silence was humility. I was wrong. Silence without boundaries isn't love, it's enabling. But I also learned this: the hardest gift you can give someone you love is the truth. The truth that they aren't owed anything. That character matters more than comfort. That real love sometimes means letting them fall so they can learn to fly. My son fell, and he learned. And he became the man I always knew he could be. You are not a footnote in someone else's story. You are the author of your own. And it's never too late to reclaim your pen and write a new chapter. Build something that matters. Love people enough to tell them hard truths. And never ever let anyone make you invisible in your own life. The world needs what only you can build. Now go build it.